Picture your day tomorrow with no job, no alarm, no boss, no Monday, no inbox waiting for you before your eyes even open. Most people imagine that as a fantasy. But for roughly 300,000 years, it wasn't a fantasy at all. It was just an ordinary day. So, what did people actually do with all that time? Not in some vague, romantic way. Hour by hour, sunrise to sunset, no phone, no shows to binge, no jobs to rush to. The real answer is stranger than you think, and it says something uncomfortable about the life you're living right now. For a long time, the story we told about early humans was simple: wake up, try not to get eaten, struggle to find food, repeat until you die young. It's a tidy story. It's also almost completely wrong. We built that story from bones and blades, from cut marks and butchered animals. But we kept finding other things too. Musical instruments carved from bone, tens of thousands of years old. Necklaces made from shells and carefully drilled stones. Cave walls covered in paintings so skilled they still stop modern artists in their tracks. Graves where injured, disabled elders were buried with flowers and care. None of that fits a species that spent every waking hour in a panic to survive. It fits a species with time. A lot of it. In the 1960s, an anthropologist named Marshall Sahlins actually went and checked. He studied groups like the San people of the Kalahari and the Hadza of Tanzania, communities still living a hunter-gatherer lifestyle. What he measured changed everything. On average, these groups spent only 3 to 5 hours a day on hunting, gathering, and basic upkeep. The rest of the day was theirs: resting, talking, making things they didn't strictly need, playing. Sahlins called this the original affluent society. Not because these people had things. They had almost nothing, and carried even less. But they had the one resource every modern person is chronically short on: time. Compare that to you. Between your commute, your job, your errands, and your responsibilities, you probably get 2 or 3 hours of real leisure a day, most of it spent staring at a screen designed to keep you anxious enough to keep scrolling. Somehow, we're working longer and resting less than people hunting animals with sharpened sticks. So what filled those extra hours? Mostly talking. If you dropped in on a group sitting around a fire at dusk, the fire wouldn't be the interesting part. The conversation would be. Studies of modern hunter-gatherer groups suggest that well over half of their social time went into talk that had nothing to do with survival. Gossip, jokes, arguments. Old stories retold for the 100th time. The anthropologist Robin Dunbar has a theory about why. Other primates bond by physically grooming each other, picking through fur one relationship at a time. But once human groups grew too large for that, language took over the job. You can talk to 5 people around a fire at once. You can't groom 5 people at once. So every idle conversation you have, every pointless call to a friend, is really an ancient piece of social technology, still running exactly as designed. Here's something else that might unsettle you a little. Sleeping 8 hours straight through the night is probably not how humans are built to sleep. It might just be a habit we picked up recently. Once artificial light made the night controllable. The historian Roger E. Kirch spent decades combing through old diaries, court records, and letters and found something strange. Before gas and electric lighting, people typically slept in 2 blocks. A first sleep starting at dusk, then an hour or 2 of calm, natural wakefulness in the middle of the night, then a second sleep until dawn. During that gap, people didn't lie awake anxious. They talked quietly with family. They prayed. They thought. Old texts mention first sleep and second sleep so casually that no one bothered to explain them, because everyone already knew what they meant. So if you ever wake at 2 in the morning feeling strangely alert instead of exhausted, you might not be broken. You might just be missing the fire, the quiet voices, and the total darkness that used to come with it. None of this leftover time was spent being idle in some crude, primitive way either. Shaping a stone blade by hand takes years to do well. One wrong strike and the whole piece shatters. Sewing hide clothing meant scraping and treating skins, then stitching them with needles made of bone, some over 50,000 years old, drilled through with a tiny eye because someone cared enough to make the stitching good. Then there's the art. The paintings in Lascaux, roughly 17,000 years old. The ones in Chauvet, possibly twice that age. These aren't scribbles. They show horses mid-stride, bison twisting their heads, animals rendered with a sense of motion and depth that still impresses trained illustrators today. Some painters even used the natural bumps of the cave wall to give their animals a three-dimensional shape, so firelight would make them seem to breathe and shift. Someone spent hours, maybe days, crouched in the dark doing that. Not for food, not for survival. Because they had something to say. They played too, constantly. Children in every hunter-gatherer society ever studied invent games, compete, negotiate, and mimic adult skills through play. The same way children everywhere still do. And they cared for each other in ways that had nothing to do with strategy. At Shanidar Cave, in Iraq, a Neanderthal known as Shanidar I lived into his 40s with a withered arm, poor hearing, and partial blindness, unable to hunt or gather effectively. Someone fed him and kept him alive for years anyway. A child with Down syndrome in what is now Spain survived to around age 8, 500,000 years ago, which only happens if someone loves you enough to make it happen. And when they did hunt, it was extraordinary. Before bows existed, humans hunted large animals like kudu and wildebeest through something called persistence hunting, simply following an animal for hours in the heat until it collapsed from exhaustion. Because humans, almost uniquely, cool themselves by sweating instead of panting. Your long legs, your flat feet, your oversized backside muscles, all of it exists because your ancestors were built to out-jog animals faster than them. Even their rest was different from ours. Neuroscientists talk about the default mode network, the part of your brain that switches on when you're doing nothing at all, the part responsible for daydreaming, reflection, and quietly solving problems in the background. It only works properly when your mind is truly unoccupied, and modern life rarely allows that. There's always a podcast, a feed, a notification. Ancient people sat by firelight with nothing to do but think, and some of humanity's oldest ideas about the stars, death, and meaning probably came directly out of that stillness. So think about tomorrow again. No alarm, no boss, no Monday. It turns out that's not a fantasy at all. It's just what being human used to feel like, before we filled every quiet hour with something to watch. Would you have wanted to live it? Let me know what you think.